The last 3 games of round 3 absolutely f***ed my perfect round. So let's hope we can finally get our first 8 for 8, because the longer it's going to take, the longer my credibility is going to go down the shitter. We kick things off with the Roosters hosting those Penrith Panthers, and this should have been a good game, but Nathan Cleary's hamstring decided against it. So for that reason and that reason alone, I am leaning towards the Sydney Roosters. The Penrith Panthers, despite not having Cleary or Luai or literally any of their big dogs in recent years, still tend to have a pretty good record, but I just think the Roosters in their first 3 games have been nearly the form team of the competition. It is at Allianz, so I'm going to lead towards the Sydney Roosters. Now the thing is, the Penrith Panthers always tend to lose and they always tend to put up a fight, so I'm only going to tip the Roosters 1-12. I can't see it being 13 plus. I could see Penrith winning 13 plus because they just shock us all again. Maybe the Sydney Roosters are a bit high on their own supply after last week and having another short turnaround, but I'm sticking with the Roosters and I'm sticking with them 1-12. Good Friday, and it is the Bunnies, who haven't done shit so far this year, taking on the Bulldogs, and surprisingly, I think I'm going to tip the Bulldogs. The Rabbitohs just have shown me nothing. While the Bulldogs haven't been great in their first 3 games, and the only team they seem to beat is also a team the Dragons flog, at least they're showing me something, and I can't say that about the South Sydney Rabbitohs, and I don't know what the heck's going on there, but that's an entirely different discussion for an entirely different video. To save me speaking about what I'm already going to speak about in a future video, let's just say I'm tipping the Bulldogs. I think, like I said, they've shown just a bit more. The Rabbitohs, they've got the key players that if even just one of them has a game out, then they're probably good enough to beat the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs. For the first 3 weeks, I've said about the Bulldogs, until they've shown me something, I'm not going to tip them, and they've at least shown me something while the Rabbitohs are protesting playing rugby league football. So I'm going to take the Bulldogs, and I'm going to take them 13 plus, because screw it. The Queensland Derby sees half of Brisbane Broncos reserve grade team take on the undefeated North Queensland Cowboys. Now the Cowboys are the only team that are 3-0, but they still can't defend to save their own lives, while the Brisbane Broncos, they've had a shaky start to the year, and it seems all their key players, their bodies are deciding to break down after last year's grand final loss. So I am going to take the North Queensland Cowboys on the simple fact that I just think the Brisbane Broncos are missing too much firepower. It should be a great contest in the middle despite the Broncos still missing Haas. I just don't think they're going to have the X factor. And while the Cowboys are conceding points for fun, it feels like they can score them whenever they want. And I just don't think the Brisbane Broncos, without all their key players, even if Reynolds does come back, are going to be able to hold the Cowboys to less points than what they'll score, which is how rugby league works. So I am going to take the Cowboys, and I'm going to take them just 1-12. The Dragons taking on Manly, and after we were robbed despite throwing a forward pass, I still think for a team that blew a 14-point lead, we looked pretty bloody good. Now the Dragons also looked good for about 15 minutes, so this is the battle of the choke artists this week, and it is at Wynn Stadium. The Dragons have been a bogey team, and that has been a bogey venue for the Manly Sea Eagles. So if there was any other team playing the Dragons, I'd be quite confident. As it's my team and I can't see us losing 2 in a row, I've got a very bad feeling. But look, on paper, I think we should win. I think we've got the cattle to win, and I think we've got the form to win. But playing the Dragons always scares me. Hopefully Flano doesn't have any dirt to deal, because if he does, then maybe the Dragons are in for one of the all-time upsets. But we looked good so far this year. I think our forward pack can match theirs, and then we've just got too much strike for the Dragons. Now I'm only going to tip us 1-12. I love how I'm saying us as if I'm actually playing. The Titans versus the Dolphins, and the Titans have looked absolutely horrible. Now they should be getting a few stars back. In saying that, they just lost their captain to a season-ending injury. Now we've done the short on the Gold Coast Titans. As for the Dolphins, they've had a whole week to prepare. They'll be very confident after redeeming their round 1 shellacking by giving a shellacking to the Dragons. It is on the Gold Coast, but the Titans have installed confidence in absolutely no one so far this year. The season's only gotten worse. So I'm going to tip the Dolphins because, a bit like the Bulldogs, they've actually shown me something this year. The Warriors versus the Knights. Both teams got their first win of the season last week. And whoever loses this one, for two teams that had very high expectations, it could be very, very concerning very, very early. Now, it is in New Zealand, which is good for the Warriors. If it's in Newcastle, I'd probably still be tipping the Warriors, but this should be an absolutely cracking game. I think the forward pack, the battle that has to give the edge to the New Zealand Warriors. And Newcastle Newcastle. I know it's still a win over Melbourne, but they were without Munster and Hughes and still struggled to get the job done. Now, the Warriors did have to get a scrappy win over the Raiders, but the Warriors have actually looked good in their game so far this season. I can't say the same for the Newcastle Knights. And I was high on the Warriors preseason, so I am going to tip them in this game. And just because I love you, New Zealand, I'm going to take you 13 plus. The Sharks versus the Raiders. Now, this game should be very good because both teams were among the best over the first few weeks, and obviously both of them lost last week. The Sharks in a bit more embarrassing fashion than the Canberra Raiders. Now, the Raiders are a team that love to drag you down and beat you up, but I'm pretty sure the Sharks would like that as well. Now, the Sharks, obviously, I would give them the edge in the back line. They should be fired up because that was very, very embarrassing against the Tigers last week. But the Raiders are a team where you can just never get them seeing 13 plus. So I am leaning towards the Cronulla Sharks, so that is who I'll tip. But I can only see it 1-12, and I think this is a contender for match of the round. And finally, the Eels. I mean, they got the win over Manly last week, but at what cost? No Mitchell Moses, and they're taking on the Tigers, who looked very, very good. Now, the Eels, after such a big win last week, are a team that has a tendency to look like a bag of crap against a team like the West Tigers. So I think the Tigers are very much in this game, and Easter Monday, it always has sort of a vibe that something special is going to happen. So I'd love to see Benji and the Tigers go 2 in a row and have a winning record for the first time in a season and forever. But I'd feel like an idiot if I did tip them over the Parramatta Eels, because the Eels have looked good so far this year. So I'm going to take the Eels 1-12 because I do back Benji and the Tigers to make a game out of it. So there are my round 4 tips. Will we finally go 8 for 8 for the first time? Probably not. But I'm taking the Roosters 1-12, the Bulldogs 13 plus, the Cowboys 1-12, Manly 1-12, the Dolphins 13 plus, the Warriors 13 plus, the Sharks 1-12, and the Eels 1-12. Ladies and gentlemen, let me know in that comment section down below. Do you think I'm an idiot or a genius? Subscribe if you haven't already. Smash that like button, and I'll see you in the next one.